department recommendation loan agreement between Macomb County and the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District. And we're going to call up our Finance Director, Steve Smeagol, as well as Public Works Commissioner Candice Miller.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We're here before you today to seek approval for a more or less a line of credit from the combination of the general fund and the delinquent tax revolving fund to the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District for an amount not to exceed $20 million for a period of 4 months to cover the short-term cash needs of the drainage district in relation to the emergency repairs on the 15-mile drain collapse.
Okay, so before we have Commissioner Miller speak, let's go ahead and get a motion. Sorry, moved by Caravelli, supported by Tocco. Okay. Hello.
Hi, Chairman. Thank you so very, very much. And to all the commissioners, I can't tell you much. I appreciate all of the cooperative spirit that's here today on behalf of the County Board of Commissioners, but also your staff with the Finance Director here and our new County Treasurer as well, Larry Rocca, who is in the room. And the Treasurer Rocca and myself and some of my staff and Chairman Smith met over at our offices to sort of try to hash this out a little bit as well. So our thought is this. As all of you know, we're in a state of crises, and I'll be happy to give an update about what's happening at the collapse there, maybe after whenever you feel is appropriate, if you'd like to hear that today. But we, of course, this thing happened on Christmas Eve, and we are running up bills. And so we've been struggling with how we're going to do the financing part of this. Obviously, we are going to be floating a bond issue at some point here. Probably 25-year bond issue, but our thought was that we needed some more cash in the immediacy here. And so we looked to the county, and I have to tell you, as a former county treasurer, I know there's a tax revolving fund around here somewhere. And we looked to that for some immediate cash here. And so the agreement that's before you today would be a great thing in many ways. First of all, it's short-term. We're calling it a loan, but it really gives us the availability to have a line of credit. And even though it says $20 million, I don't know that we would get there, but it gives us a draw. We'll draw it as we need it. Not having to do a short-term bond issue and then a subsequent long-term bond issue, probably going to save the ratepayers in the MIDD, as we call it, the Macomb Interceptor Drainage District. Maybe, I don't know, I'm just guessing, $300,000 or something. If we don't have to go to, you don't have to insure the bond issue, you don't have to have bonding counsel, you don't have to have the finances, or whatever it is. I'm not sure if that's the right number or not, but it saves us doing that going into a short-term bond. So we're very hopeful that you'll approve this agreement today. We intend to pay the same rate of interest as what your current investments are. Of course, there's not much interest out there right now, but this is a 0.55, so it's about as cheap as you can buy money right now. Good for us, good for you, because you're going to be totally reimbursed for it all. And we will reimburse totally whatever we draw on this as soon as we pass the long-term bond issue, which will be I think sooner than what we gave ourselves a bit of a margin in this loan agreement from a date standpoint, but it should be sooner than that. So that's our intent to pay it back immediately. And again, it's a great thing for for all of us, particularly the ratepayers, our mutual constituents. And there was a bit of concern raised at one point about whether or not doing something like this would have any impact on the county's long-term credit rating. And I know your finance director has talked to Moody's and a couple of others, and everybody seems to agree this has absolutely zero impact on that. So am I missing anything, John? Okay.
Okay,
I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Commissioner Caravelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. I don't know if this is for Steve or yourself. This motion for the amount of money not to exceed and for the principles of interest that we've talked about, what is the, there's no timeline on this, and I'd like to know if we can attach a timeline. I don't want this just to be open-ended. Is this something we can put a timeline back on?
There's actually 120 days.
Okay, I didn't see that in the actual motion that was written out. So it's 120 days from the date.
Yeah, so it'll act as a line of credit. So the Public Works office will request draws from my office. We'll forward that money, calculate interest. It'll all be repaid within 4 months.
when the bond sells. So you're anticipating with 120 days for the bond proposal to go out.
Correct.
And we think it'd be less than that probably, but it gives us a bit of a cushion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the Madam Commissioner. I've heard two options sort of referenced. One would be to borrow from a short-term bond from the bond market, which makes sense. It would be more expensive to do that. Were there other options considered as well? The short-term bond market, there's this option. What were the other options that were considered, or are there other options?
We just didn't consider any other options, to tell you the truth. We knew that there would be availability here. We're looking for such a short-term amount. It's county money. It's the tax revolving fund. I know the county treasurer has no problem with it because even though, I mean, there's plenty of, I don't know how much is in there exactly, but what we're going to draw won't have any impact on their ability to make the communities whole when they have to pay for the delinquencies, which is what that money is for. So we just all thought this was such a very good idea and such a short-term thing that we really didn't explore any other options of borrowing money. I mean, you could, I mean, if you went out into the, you could do notes, I guess. You could do all of these various kinds of things. You're probably looking, you'd be more than a 1%, though. I don't know where you're going to get 0.55. Any other questions?
$4.50.
I'm kidding. It broke. Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, it seems just from the news accounts and from your updates that it's money that you have to somehow get a hold of. I mean, in order to continue the project. If somehow we were to reject this, and what would happen? What would happen to the project?
What we would do is we would do a short-term bond issue. That's what we were contemplating initially, and we were just trying to figure out how much do we really need. Now, when you do a short term like that for your initial expenses, the arbitrage, et cetera, they won't let you borrow more than what you're going to need because they never want you to be in a position where you borrowed all this money and you don't need all this money. So then we're trying to figure out, well, how much do we actually need? We don't know how much we need. Invoices are still coming. We don't have all the invoices yet from the contractors. Obviously, expenses are going every day. And even with reimbursements for the community there, about the 3 houses we're condemning, we're trying to figure all of that out. So we were in a very gray area about how much money we needed. And yet if we did a short-term bond issue, we'd have to pay all the expenses of floating that issue. And then hopefully, we weren't flat-footed with the thing. So that was really, we were really struggling with that. And then we all determined that this was what we think is sort of a perfect solution. And so we didn't go any further than that of really looking at any other avenues. And, as I say, I'm sure there are other avenues, but the money would be more expensive than this. And again, we want to make sure that the county is totally whole. So whatever the finance director has mentioned here, they'll be calculating the interest with the kinds of investments. Of course, municipalities are limited on the kinds of investments that you can go to anyway, so you're even getting less than others, right? I mean, in the private sector, but here, I mean, it is what it is. And so we think it's good all the way around.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Duche.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Trial by fire, so to speak. Question, you're looking to get $20 million at this point of time. Has anybody actually, when do you think you're going to get an actual number for the bond proposal and so on and so forth? And I don't think you've gone down to physically take a look at all this. When do you think you're going to come up with a realistic number on the total cost of this project?
Well, what I can tell you right now, Commissioner, is we are going to have our first drain board meeting of the MIDD next week, actually, and we at that meeting we'll start to pay some of the invoices. Right. Then we've got a lot of commitments out there for balances due. Those probably won't be paid on Monday, right. But we are going to start having some invoices to pay. And as far as how much it's actually going to cost, right. I would tell you this. We actually are putting out, I'm not sure if the last time I addressed you, but the first thing we did, as you know, sometimes this department in the past has had a reputation of maybe not bidding everything out. We bid everything. We're bidding everything we can out. In fact, I tell you, the only thing we haven't bid out, actually, and I'll just tell you this honestly, is the engineering. The engineers that are there, I met with an elected leader of each of the 11 communities in the MIDD, and without the engineers, because we wanted to have a very open discussion, right? about, I said, listen, we have AEW out there. We're very happy with them. And the truth is, it's sort of like bidding out your doctor, right? I mean, I don't know what, it's not. So we all agreed to a person there that this was fine, how we were proceeding. We're going to keep an eye on everything, and we're looking at everything. But as far as everything else, we are bidding everything out. And the bids actually for the interceptor, the initial interceptor, the collapsed interceptor, are actually going out this week. And the bids, I mean, we're really trying to expedite this thing. I mean, I think that's pretty rapid considering when it just happened. And what we did before this is we actually had qualifications standards that we put out there. So that we wanted to have people not just start bidding, but that they were qualified to bid. I mean, this is not, I mean, you have to have the right equipment. You got to have the right people coming in here.
Joe's Excavating isn't going to do it.
That's right. You're absolutely right. So we had 13 people that thought they were qualified, and of the 13, there are 6. There are 6 people that are going to bid, and they're all Michigan companies, and those bids will be in the first week of March. Now, in the interim, we're doing some things that we know they're going to have. So, for instance, we are purchasing all of the steel that's going to be required for the shaft. In other words, when we actually get on top of this thing to build it, to fix it, we're going to be digging and building a shaft that is 300 feet long, about 22 feet wide, and of course it's 60 feet deep. So you can imagine the size of this thing. And your first thing is, what are you going to do with all the dirt, right? I mean, that's an incredible amount of dirt. But the thing is that some of this dirt is, it's like septic dirt, a lot of it, right? So we're going to have to landfill it. You've got that kind of expense. But we're already purchasing, we're going to bid out and purchase the metal, the steel that's required to build the structure, superstructure within the shaft that are required, obviously, for safety and that. And so we're going to have that before the contractor actually bids, because whoever it is going to have to buy it anyway. So we know we might as well just go ahead and try to get it now to really get this thing going. Okay. And in the interim, we're also building as we speak. And any of you want to go by there, you will see this long-term bypass that we're building there. And there are 2 or 3 enormous pipes. These things are so big because they're parallel pipes. We're running parallel pipes down 15 Mile Road. Okay. And so those are, we hope to have the temporary bypass done actually the first week of March. So, and once we have that done, we can all sort of breathe here for a moment, because that will allow us to move the flow from the interceptor into the temporary bypass. These pipes are so big. I was out there the other night, and the guys kept going, "Do you see these pipes?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm standing right next to them here. But do you see how big these pipes are?" I said, "Yeah, I see them. You know, here's the where we're going to weld them together and all this. It's very interesting stuff. You should take a look at it."
I don't think people actually realize the magnitude of this. The newspapers and so on and so forth talk about 100 yards one way, 100 yards the other way. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but they don't realize it's 55 to 60 feet down.
Right.
So
actually, fixing the interceptor is going to, I don't want to say it's going to be an easy part of this, but digging the shaft is probably harder than that. Yeah. Once you dig the shaft, now you can, put the new pipe in.
A question, and we've heard a variety of numbers bantered about. Where do you, and I'm not holding you to it or anything else, where do you think the estimates for all of this are going to come in at?
I would say between $70 and $80 million for this first section, this interceptor that we must fix. And that would be pretty inclusive of most of all of these various components. Now, as you know, there's another possibility of an add-on later, and I think we will all decide that together if we want to go to phase 2. When I say together, I mean all the MIDD communities. I mean, they're paying the bills. I mean, the truth is I could probably make some of these decisions myself, but I'm not doing that. We're all going to jump off together if it's something that we decide we want to do, because it's an enormous cost.
Yeah. So literally jumping off.
Yes.
And
if you went to that next phase,
right,
now you're going well north of $100 million. That's where you start hearing $140 million.
This whole thing started off at 70, and then we ended up at 140, and then it went up from there, and then it went down from there. If it's under 100 million, which boggles the mind anyway, 60 to 70, then it's doable, but it's not as bad as some of the estimates were originally. So that I'm feeling better about this as time goes on.
Well, it depends on the, again, on the bids. So I will have a much more definitive answer in March than I do today. Once we get those bids, then we can, I mean, we're sort of know, the engineering is always a percentage
Right.
of the job, and the various things, the pumps, all of these different kinds of things, the reimbursements for the folks
Well,
with their
any of
homes.
the other stuff,
Yeah.
Commissioner Drollet has been more than happy to help.
All right, is that,
So thank you.
okay, thank you. Commissioner Brown? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Myjack?
Thank you. Hi, Candace. So you're saying that in total, you think this whole project will cost between 70 and 80?
It's, that, again, very,
Rough,
very
very
rough,
rough.
right? Very
Right.
rough estimates, but yes, that's generally the ballpark of what we think. Again, in March, we'll know a lot more definitively. One thing is, the economy is good right now, so people do have work. On the other hand, this is a marquee job right now. So there's a lot of interest in getting this job. And the thing is, we're hoping, like in the initial bid, because there is this potential that we might fix the other phase, right? Then that's why I say you could go. So you would think if you're the contractor, maybe you have an in to be able to fix the whole thing if you can get it. So for all those reasons, we're hoping we get a bit of a better bid. But there are 6 companies that are going to be able to bid. And I can tell you who they are if I can remember them all. I think there's Dan's Excavating, D'Agostini, Rickman, J.D., Kornfeld, he's downriver, and there's another one. I'm sorry, I can't remember it right now, but there are 6.
Do you know if they are all Macomb County based businesses?
They're not all Macomb
Okay.
County, but several of them are Macomb County. About
Right.
half or more are
Right,
Macomb
okay.
County, and they're all right in this immediate area. I mean, like this J.D. company just did a very similar type of a project on the OMID. That's the Oakland-Macomb Interceptor. And so they did about $60 million worth of rehab with the Hobos lining that we're talking about here and that. So, they're local. I mean, they're local to us, right? Southeast Michigan.
Right. How much have we spent up to date approximately? I think a couple weeks ago you said it was, what, 67 million when we took the tour a few weeks ago? I can't remember. But do you have any idea where we're at right now?
What we have right now, when we have our meeting on Monday, we're probably, let's see, I don't know if I had that written down here, exactly how much we've spent so far. I think we probably have invoices to date of several million that we'll probably be paying next week.
Okay.
So obviously, we have not gotten invoiced yet from,
Okay. And then
the really
who's-
big invoices have not come in, but they will be coming in
Okay.
probably throughout next week and if we're in the next 10 days. So
Is the mid district currently paying for all those expenses then?
no,
No.
not yet.
Not yet.
I mean,
Where's all
well, they
that-
will be. I mean, yeah, excuse me, yes. They will be because we will be having a drainage district meeting for the mid next week. And the board of the drainage district right now is comprised of myself and Chairman Smith and Chairman Kleinfeld. And so the 3 of us will be on the initial mid meeting. Now, not to get in the weeds here, but as you remember, we've changed by state law the construct of the drainage board. So the next month, it will be myself, you, I believe.
Okay.
So get ready,
Okay.
because you represent
Right.
Sterling Heights is the largest
Right.
city in the mid, and you have the largest apportioned share within that city.
Right.
And so I think you will be on there, and also the county executive and/or his designee, who is Brian Santos, who you all
Very
approved.
good. Very good. So maybe let me ask you this then. So who's paying for this? And if the mid is not paying the bills,
No, the mid
That's
is,
where I'm
I
confused.
misspoke, yes, the mid is paying the bills.
Gotcha,
The
I
bills are all
understand.
coming out of the mid. We're
Right.
going to have a mid drainage board meeting.
Right.
We will be
Okay.
starting to draft some of these funds
And-
to
okay.
start
And
paying
so
invoices next week.
is it safe to assume then the mid is running out of money? That's why we're helping the mid out with this then?
The mid right now has about $5 million in it, I think.
Okay.
Maybe 4 or 5 million right now that is in there. So there is a bit of cash in there.
How much was in it prior to this Christmas Eve disaster? Any idea?
That's how much.
That's how much?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how much is in there.
Okay, keep up the good work, Candace. Thanks for coming here today, and we're all glad to help out.
Thank you. You know,
Thank you.
if I could just go out of turn here just for a moment, because I did want to share this story with you. Somebody asked me, I think Andy, just before we started here. You know, we're all talking about being in a crisis here. And I just have to relay an experience that happened here at this sinkhole on Monday night. What is today? What was Thursday? Yeah, excuse me. Was it Monday? Tuesday night. God, my days are running into one another here. So we had the rain, right? And we all thought we were okay with the rain. And obviously, you've all seen the pictures of the restricted flow that's in this pipe. And so we had about a half an inch of rain by about 4 o'clock that evening, and we were all like, oh, gosh, this is great. We think we're going to be all right because we've got these monitoring devices. I know the chairman's been down to see them, some of you others, what we call the SCADA system there. And, you know, we thought, well, we're okay. We're getting through this thing. And honestly, between about 5 and 7, it came down like crazy. It rained harder then than it had rained all day. And I went home. You know, I'm having my dinner. I emailed my guy, who I call my SCADA master. He's our version of Yoda, I guess. And I said, Vince, how are we doing down there? He says, this is not looking good. We're having an enormous rise in the levels very, very rapidly. And then I email him a half an hour later. I go, what's happening there right now? He says, our big pump just went out. Oh, my gosh, about had a heart attack, right? So I jumped in my car. I drove down there. Now it's about 8 o'clock. And so between 8 and 11 o'clock, we watched the levels on this thing go up. It's interesting, but almost in a morbid way there, watching that, because when we get to 570, that's an elevation, but when you get to 570, that's when we knew we had to discharge raw sewage into the Clinton River. And we watched that thing rise and rise and rise, and the pump is out. We're running around. They're trying to cannibalize parts from another pump. You know, these pumps are the size of this room practically. They have to pump the stuff from 60 feet down into a bit of a bypass that's there. And anyway, long story short, and then one other thing, we have the ability also at what they call the Clintondale Pump Station, which is right by I-94 and Shook. So we shut that out. That's the Lakeshore Interceptor that runs up there by I-94. So it's Chesterfield and Lenox and New Haven and Harrison, et cetera. So we shut that down, and they had enough capacity in the pipe, thank God, to hold that while this pump is getting fixed. And anyway, so we're looking at 570. That thing got up to 568.8. We literally turned on about 11:15. We flipped on the pump to start discharging the raw sewage just to make sure the pump worked. Well, we didn't flip the switch on to let the sewage go. All of a sudden, the pump now is, I'm telling you, it's like a movie. Whoa. And anyway, the pump started working, and then you see the thing stabilize, and then it started very slowly to go down. So we dodged an enormous environmental disaster bullet by not having to do that. And now the only thing that's missing from our SCADA monitoring is our heart rates, okay? I said if you had a line there for our heart rates, we would all been flatlined, I think, by that point. But at any rate, these people that are out working on this sinkhole, and they're working all through the night. They're working all through the night there. They're really doing a remarkable job. I have some great staff that are out there, and the contractors that are out there, and the engineers that are out there. I mean, everybody had shared the same emotion about, my gosh, we just cannot do this. What are you going to do? Otherwise, you got to back it up into people's basements. So,
okay, and obviously because of the emergency nature of it, we can't be meeting every day and approving everything that's happening at this point. So that's obviously because of the emergency nature. That's not happening. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we're all aware that I would say the Commissioner Miller is on top of all this or below all of this. I teasingly said to her, are you sleeping at night? And she just answered that question. No, she's down at the sinkhole. She's in here with the finance director for a $20 million loan, temporary loan. I'm totally in favor of that, but I just want to mention the fact that this happened in Macomb County. It's our Macomb County problem. She comes to us for money. Why would you go to a stranger? I'm totally in agreement with this. Hopefully there's nothing more that you will need, and if you do, we're still here. It's still our problem. We share it jointly. I don't think any of us will disagree that Commissioner Miller has a great handle on this, along with her staff. So I'm totally in favor of this. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Tocco.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you tell us how much is available in that tax revolving fund? Is that a Steve question?
That's either Steve or Larry Rocca knows those numbers.
You want to handle it, John? I can. That's I don't want to give a loaded answer, but it all depends on the liquidity in that fund. So my understanding from the treasurer's office is there's about 8 million in the delinquent tax fund. So they time the maturity of their investments around the time that they're going to be purchasing the delinquencies from the locals, which will probably begin end of March, early April. But there's also liquidity available in the general fund. So this is meant to be a combination of about 8 million from the delinquent tax fund and about 12 million from the general fund, if you will, the general pool.
Okay, so it's a combination of the two
Right.
funds. It's not just the tax
Correct.
revolving fund.
Right.
Okay. And then once that loan becomes available, what is the process then for spending it? So 20 million is available, and then when bills come in, do those bills go to the drain board, or do they come back here?
Well, they'll go to the drain board first. The mid board will approve the payments, then request a drawdown from my office, and then I'll work with the treasurer's office to then generate a check to fund those expenses to the mid.
Okay, so it will be the drain board then that will approve
Correct.
expenditures from that loan?
I'm going to defer to
Yes.
Commissioner Miller, but
Yes.
that's the way I would expect it to happen.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Ms. Chairman. Good to see you again, Candice.
Yes, thank you.
Question for you. The governor released some Section 19 funds under the Emergency Act of the state. I think it's $100,000 per jurisdiction. Some of us had questions. Is that going to be, I guess, $1.1 million, $100,000 for each of the affected communities for the sinkhole?
We had the same exact question, and
Okay.
I still don't know the answer to it.
Okay.
They're looking at it at the state there, because we were thinking, first they said, well, Clinton Township and Fraser can obviously apply because both of them have expended emergency services and various kinds of things, and they could pay themselves back from some of those funds. But we said, well, you've got 11 communities in the mid, so can't you just times it by 11, right?
Right.
They're all going to have expenses, so they are looking at that.
Okay.
Now, I appreciate you asking that question, because I forgot to say we are also looking at the possibility of other outside financing to assist us. And we haven't been too successful at the federal level, because mostly what they would have available is, for instance, they have something called the WIPIA grant, but the interest rate on that is 3.5 points. I mean, geez, what are you doing that for, right? Then at the, they're loans, not grants, loans, so you have to pay it back. But at the state level, of course, they have the state revolving fund, and we are literally getting ready to put in an application for state revolving funds. We'll see how we do with that. That's those, around 2%. They're around 2%, I think, right now. We're a little bit out of the cycle for the state revolving funds, but our friends in Lansing have said they're going to try to work with us here, depending on how much we need. So there's a possibility we borrow a little bit of money through there, and then maybe the bonds. We're still trying to figure out exactly how it would all go. And of course, obviously, we're looking for a direct appropriation as well. And I will say that tomorrow we have the chairman of the House Transportation Committee coming by to take a look at this thing, and we're just seeing whatever we can. We're trying to see if there's availability through emergency money, and we've documented everything for our long-term bypass, which is really an emergency bypass. It should qualify. Which is about $10 million. But whether or not we're going to get those funds, honestly, I do not know yet. But we're on the phone with them every day.
Well, and I appreciate, I think you should get some credit for the dual actions that you're doing. Not only are you hands-on dealing with pumps that aren't working, but I know you're also tirelessly working to try to get funds here so that we can try to get some help in solving this problem. And certainly I echo what Commissioner Romano said. You're coming to us. I have no problem helping you. If we can be an easy source to help you out, you can count on our vote here, at least mine.
I really appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone making the comment about Macomb County, and this is our problem. When we have this quaint idea here in Macomb County that we take care of ourselves for the most part, and that's the way it should be. And I will tell you, just dealing with this crisis and watching people, I've mentioned to Commissioner Toko in her district, I mean, you just can't believe how professionally all these folks whose homes have been impacted are handling themselves. I mean, their voices don't even rise. I mean, my voice is higher than their voice. They're just so, they've been so unbelievable, really. And the way the community has come together and this county has come together, whether that's been fundraising for some of the affected folks there, or everybody getting together for the water restrictions. By the way, I got to mention that. This is part of my talking points all the time. Make sure you still restrict your water usage, and you have to do that until we get this bypass built. and it has definitely made a difference. I mean, I was on Super Bowl Sunday, I took my family down to the Cruise Inn, right? We're at the Cruise Inn. Tommy comes right over to me and says, look at our buffet table here. There's nothing on there but paper plates. We're not using the dishwasher tonight. You know, I mean, this is what's happening. Kids are bringing things home from school, and you see this. This is what Macomb County is. This is the kind of people we are here in Macomb County. This is a resilient community, a resilient community.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioners on the first round? Commissioner Sauger.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. You got me even at home in Centerline, which isn't this part. We got watching the way we use our water over there, okay? So I think of it. But I just got one question. Is the pipe that is finished in the ground, whatever, how much there is, from what it was prior, what is the base on there that, you know, that it's a solid base under there?
It's the soil conditions. Well, first of all, we won't really know till we get down there. But, you know, you can assume because of what happened, that there'd been some sort of leak. It could have been going on for decades, right? It's slowly eroding. Now, all of a sudden, there's no support. The pipe collapses. The sinkhole happens on top of that. But one of the engineers explained it to me one time, which is sort of stuck in my brain here. He says, you know, if you think about the Earth's surface always changing, 40,000 years ago, there was a beach here. This is a beach. This thing is like laying on a beach, if you will, now 60 feet down. So you have that incredibly fine, just like at a beach, right? You have very, very fine silt as it's wet, and that's what's gotten in now. All of this has gotten into the interceptor, 11 foot tall, and you've got about this much flow. It is just full of this silt. Which is its own problem, quite frankly. I mean, some of that is finally starting to go down and impacting other areas, so we got to get this thing fixed as soon as we can.
So in closing, I got one comment. From what you've done so far, you are meant for this job. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on the first round? Okay, Commissioner Toko.
Thank you. Will what is the status of the residents' claims? I know that certain residents have made claims. What is the status of those claims?
We, two things. In regards to the claims of the homes that everyone has gone back to their homes, we've worked out a process now so that we will start, we're going to start paying some of their claims. Now, all of them haven't come in yet, but we do have a process for a rate for per diem, for, you know, even if they stayed with a family member, somebody was inconvenienced, right? So we're not going to be quibbling about that. It's going to be a per diem for the days that they were out of their house, and other kinds of ancillary expenses that can be documented. Obviously, we have to have it all documented, but we do have a complete process. We've had our attorneys meet with all of those families several times, sort of walking them through the process. And for the 3 homes that have been condemned, we bid out the appraiser. I mean, I'm telling you, we're bidding everything out. It's not like you're doing a refi on your mortgage or something. When a government is condemning a property, you end up with a condemnation cost by statute of, I think it's 125% of the marketable value. And then, of course, you have the contents in that. So the appraisal will be a thick thing. And obviously, we are very hopeful that we will come to an accommodation with all 3 of those families and preclude any kind of a lawsuit. So we're hopeful with that. But, you know, there have been other kinds of expenses in the immediacy there. We had to pay for a lease right next to the shopping center for the access road. You know, we have that expense. And let me just also say about the Macomb Community College, who, thank goodness, owns the property right on the corner of 15 and Hayes. And I mean, that is the college's property. I was just talking last night with Jennifer Haas and Vince Viviano, who's a member there, and Frank Cusimano is back here. I'm going to put him on the spot right here. Frank, they started, well, I won't tell you what you guys started off at, but after Frank and I were done talking, we'd actually got down to a fee of $1. So we're looking for him to champion that at the board meeting of the community college. But the college has been great as well. I mean, everybody's really, I said, of course, we'll accept liability. We will restore to better than new. But, you know, why are we paying a lease for this? But we need the land to stage. So there's really been an interesting components, how all of this is all coming together there.
So will some of these funds that are being made available, will those be used to pay residents' claims?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Anyone else wish to be heard? Okay, please vote on your iPads. Okay, that's it, right? Motion passes 13-0.